Let me bring in Myron Gaines, because you've been smirking and laughing. What's funny about any of this?
Well, I mean, I find it interesting that you guys want to virtue signal and, wag the finger and say she's a racist and everything else like this.
No, she admitted she's a racist.
Thank you.
Well, let me
I'm not wagging a finger at anybody. I don't need to but Myron, with respect, Myron, I don't need to wag a finger when somebody says, yeah, I'm racist. I use the N-word against black people. I don't care. That's a racist. I'm not wagging any finger. I'm not accusing.
Yo, Pierce like to cut people off.
And you know what? But shout out to Pierce, because Brody was dead wrong. That's my brother, but he was dead wrong. The woman did say that she's a racist.
She did say it, yeah.
Right? She's proud of it. And I think that because our society is so censored and it's so sensitive, when someone comes out and says, hey, I am this, it's almost hard to like accept it. Like, for example, if someone came out and said, I'm a RAP and then space IST, and they said that as an identity, you kind of wait, what, bro? What did you say? If they're like, yeah, in my free time, I like to, take advantage of females. That's what I like to do. You'd be kind of shocked and thrown off. And I think that's what people are having trouble accepting, is that she came out and said, yes, I am the boogeyman. I really want these people out of here. And so when Myron said, oh, you're calling her a racist, no, she called herself a racist.
Yeah. And I even had to, when Pierce first pressed her on it, I'm like, I gave her a little bit of benefit of the doubt because she didn't explain herself. But then she just kept doubling down. I'm like, oh, yeah, no, this is in her heart. Yeah, she is a racist.
She's a real one.
Yeah.
Anybody, she is admitting it proudly. Even you can't defend that, surely.
Everybody is racist to some degree. The reality is it depends on, a lot of people want to be politically correct. A lot of people want to sit there and say, I'm not racist at all. We all have biases. We all have stereotypes. We all make jokes. We all are racist to some degree. Now, how racist you are is a whole other situation, but everyone is racist. That's number one. Next thing I want to say, see, I think this Shiloh Hendricks.
I agree with that part, what Myron said. When how he's saying, everyone has a little bit of races in them, stereotypes, they have some biases and stuff like that. That part is true. But that's much different than how she's been explaining and expounding on her points during this interview. She pretty much confirmed that her racist is different than the type of racist that Myron is talking about. Her racist is, no, I am racist. I insult black people. She never said nothing differently. I use the N-word. This is what I do. So I think that Myron, what he's saying is facts right here, but it's general facts. Let's continue on.
And Metcalf situation is a microcosm of a much bigger problem. And that bigger problem is what I call systemic organization. And what I mean by this is, for decades, we've had black people literally running around with black supremacy, committing crimes, not getting accountability for their actions, and then they blame the system for it. For example, George Floyd, criminal. Ferguson, criminals. Freddie Gray, criminal. A lot of these people are criminals, and what ends up happening is they challenge the police officer, they get into a physical altercation, things go left, they die, something happens, use of force is utilized, and then they want to cry about the result, when in reality, it's not the police killing black people, it's black people killing black people. And if you want to talk about black on white violence, black people kill white people 2 times as much. And on top of that, most of the shootings in America, a lot of the times, are white cops killing other unarmed white men. So this whole systemic racism or police brutality or, oh, it's all so messed up. The reality is this. Black people have been able to get away with a ridiculous amount of privilege in America for a very long time. They're able to be racist with impunity. They're able to call white people without being challenged back. And
okay, so the thing on this, he says black people have gotten away with a lot of privilege, but the privilege he's explaining is, I mean, it's not really privilege. It's like, okay, I can say this, but it's not really privilege. You would say that it's an effect of what the white man has done. Because I always like to say, like, if we're going to speak about, because I see the claims that he's making right now. He's saying that, well, white people are behaving this way and saying these things, and this uproar that white people are doing, this is an effect because black people have been BLM riots. They can call a white person, which I'm against all of that too, but black people has been doing this. But then let's peel the layer back even further. Well, why are black people doing this? Well, black people have are doing it now, and the BLM riots and all of this is because of the racism in America. What's your take on that, Marquette?
Myron's my good friend. However, everything he said was nonsensical. He hasn't made one good point so far, and he'll still be my good friend even though we disagree. So number one, when he states that everyone's racist, this is not a fact, but he's able to suggest that it is, and no one challenged that idea. That's false. I would go out and say I'm not racist at all. For example, and a lot of people, they look at Myron, and because they're provincial and inexperienced and not sophisticated or well-traveled, they look at Myron and they say, oh, he's black. No, Myron's not black. To me, he looks just like a dark Arab. And the reason he looks like a dark Arab is because I've traveled extensively, particularly in the Middle East and Eastern Africa and Southern Africa, and I've seen his face before many times. And so you look at his features, they're not the features of a sub-Saharan African, even though he is dark. You find dark skin in various places, whether you're talking about in India or you're talking about in Australia. We're talking about the Aborigines, the real Australians. So Myron may be dark, but he's not a black person in the sense of he's not an African American, or he's not really properly an African. He looks just like an Arab to me. He is an Arab, and he's just a dark Arab. So when people get angry that he's not so sympathetic to black issues, well, it's like, that's not what he identifies with. I believe his parents' mother tongue was probably Arabic. And in as much as that's the case, I get it. However, I would venture to say this, with all respect for my good friend, that he shouldn't even be a part of this conversation. Piers Morgan shouldn't be in the conversation. He's not even an American. He's a goddamn Britisher. And he's therefore removed from this. Myron, he just got here yesterday, as did his parents. They're not a part of this conversation. The history of America and the racial politics, it's black and it's white. This is not to disrespect any other group. And if there wasn't two other groups that would be involved, it'd be the Native Americans, because they were here before all of us and largely got eradicated. They still exist in casinos and in reservations. Shout out to them. So they can be a part of the conversation. And then you'd have Latinos a part of the conversation. But frankly, American racial political history is black and white. There's not much in between. It was always a conversation between these two opposing groups, and they're not really opposing, except that the whites wanted to, oppose the blacks. And it's not every bit of the white structure. It was primarily the property class. And then the other ones just had racism, like petty racism. The property class, they owned black people in a literal sense. But I say all that to say, number one, Myron is irrelevant. He shouldn't be speaking on these issues. These are not his issues at all. Similarly, they're not Piers Morgan's issues, but specifically with regards to Myron's arguments, they're atrocious. Saying everyone is racist, this is not a fact. Saying most people are racist, that makes sense. And then thirdly, he basically conflates a lot of things. And as a result, you can't track the arguments because he's blurring together too many things. In fact, I'd encourage you to rewind back and we can take it sentence by sentence and deconstruct the arguments.
Let's do it.
Respect, Myron. I don't need to wag a finger.
And Marquette, let me know when you want to stop it.
Okay.
When somebody says, yeah, I'm racist, I use the N-word against black people, I don't care. That's a racist. I'm not wagging any finger. I'm not accusing anybody. She is admitting it proudly. Even you can't defend that, surely.
Everybody is racist to some degree. The reality is,
Piers Morgan's argument, she said the N-word with the hard R, which was clearly a hateful thing. She was saying it to be malicious against the black American. That is hate. Then Myron basically engages in a subtle red herring, very slick. He says, everyone is racist, which what he's talking about is a mitigating idea, which suggests that, well, all of us have our own biases, yes, but that's a lot different than me going around calling people BACKS or calling people ching chong, and using all these malicious, hateful terms. If I, for example, have some inherent bias or some instinct to discriminate merely because people are unfamiliar or different, or I'm ignorant of them, or maybe I've seen a lot of stereotypes, that's a lot different than being willfully malicious. So Piers is talking about racism that is willfully malicious, whereas Myron tries to change the topic to racism that is kind of inherent and thoughtless. So, and I can obliterate these one by one. Carrying on.
it depends on, a lot of people want to be politically correct. A lot of people want to sit there and say, I'm not racist at all. We all have biases. We all have stereotypes. We all make jokes. We all are racist to some degree. Now, how racist you are is a whole other situation, but everyone is racist. That's number one. Next thing I want to say, see, I think this Shiloh, Hendrickson, Metcalf situation is a microcosm of a much bigger problem. And that
this is another thing that clearly shows that we're dealing with racism, because these two situations are very unrelated, very unrelated. Shiloh is a white woman who's in a situation that is clearly racial because she's screaming the N-word at a child, no less, a child with special needs. It's clearly a racial situation. The Austin Metcalf situation could be a racialized situation by the onlookers, because truth be told, that could have easily been a situation where Carmelo Anthony was sitting under someone's track tent. A black kid could have walked up to him like, hey, bro, you ain't even a part of this school. You're not supposed to be under this umbrella, bro. Go over there. And then Carmelo Anthony could have hunkered down and said, no, make me. And then the dude put his hands on him. Black guy put his hands on Carmelo. Carmelo pulled out that thing, hawked him. Now he's dead. There was no overt racial reality to that. It was made racial by the onlookers. So these two phenomena are not even congruous. The only reason that whites bring that up is as an excuse, is a rallying cry to circle around this white kid who is a victim and thereby aggress toward blacks. That's all that was. And no,
bigger problem is what I call systemic organization.
I just want for those who are watching, each one of these arguments are being obliterated and it's effortless. I don't even have to think, to be honest with you. I could play piano right now while saying this. It's that easy. Go ahead.
Hey, man, you spitting.
And what I mean by this is, for decades, we've had black people literally running around with black supremacy.
He said for decades, we've had black people running around with black supremacy. Fascinating. I'd go ahead and say, if I was Piers Morgan, which I'm not, because I'm not gonna get into it. But if I was Piers Morgan, I would say for decades, well, Myron, how many decades have we had black people running around with black supremacy? How many decades is that, Myron? Was it in the 1800s? Was it during enslavement? No. Okay. Was it during Reconstruction? Was it right after the Civil War? No. Was it during Jim Crow when they were not getting their enfranchisement? No. Okay. Was it when the 1950s and 1960s when they were marching and trying to get the right to vote? No. Okay. Was it the 1970s when they still weren't getting their due? Was it the 1980s when they had to radicalize because they weren't getting their due? When did black people become black supremacists? Was it in the 90s when they started perming their hair out to imitate the white people that most of them look up to very much? When did the black supremacy start to exist? Name me 3 black supremacist organizations with significant membership. You couldn't. In fact, I could get a Lil Wayne concert and that would have more attendees than any black supremacist organization you could name. For example, if you talk about the Nation of Islam, this organization nearly has no members. That's why they partnered up with the Church of Scientology, which is a white organization. The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, once the FBI went in and murdered people, literally, illegally, unethically, the new Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, they can't even get members. So what are you talking about? This is not truth. There's no evidence of it. It's truly speculative.
Committing crimes, not getting accountability for their actions, and then they blame the system for it. For example,
he stated black people are committing crimes and not having accountability for their actions. This is the most ludicrous thing on earth. See, I would challenge him with the statistics. Number one, half of the prison population is black male. So it's about 48, 49%, right? The black population in America is about 12%, and I would venture to say much less if we actually had a true accounting of who's in the country. With that being the case, we are disproportionately represented in the penal system. So clearly they're experiencing accountability. Furthermore, not only are they experiencing accountability, they're experiencing more than accountability. There's a scholar named Dr. Renford Reese, whom I know personally. He wrote a book called The Prison Race. You can find a lot of the knowledge I speak to, which is all fact-based. You go to amazon.com/shop/the Saint and the Sinner spelled out. It's a lot of literature there. But anyways, Dr. Renford Reese wrote a book called Prison Race. When you hold consistent prior crime, current crime, and then you look at jail time, you find that blacks are getting more jail time than whites on average. It's very clear. It's very much so statistically significant. So they are being held accountable. In fact, they're being abused in the criminal injustice system of the United Snakes of America. And I say this as a patriot, but to be a patriot means that I identify with the people of America, who are the greatest people on the planet Earth, including with our significant racist population, but our government is filthy. And what he's speaking of right now is completely devoid of facts.
George Floyd, criminal. Ferguson, criminals. Freddie Gray, criminal.
Pause.
A lot of these people are criminals.
This is the first time he says something meaningful in this conversation. And it's meaningful because Black people do circle around the wrong person. We support the degenerate in our community. We support the, as he said, I don't even know these people's name because I don't even care who they are, but Freddie Gray, I remember because I used to teach in Baltimore, Maryland. And unlike the multitude on the internet who talk about Black issues, I actually was a teacher teaching Black kids in some of the worst, most dangerous schools in America. I've actually put in the work because I care beyond just babbling my gums. Damn, I didn't mean to curse. Excuse me. I got to be like Cooley. But you heard me. But you know, the Freddie Gray, the Mike whoever, and the other guy who was, I forget or George Floyd. Yeah, we circle around the wrong persons, but it goes beyond that. Charleston White, who told you guys that he was the person to listen to? He's a rat and a snitch and a criminal. You circle around the Sexy Reds and all of these characters. Black people need to circle around the best of us, the best among us, not the degenerates. So this I agree on, even though he didn't explicitly state that. So my good friend Myron, I think, has a meaningful point here.
Let's continue on.
And what ends up happening is they challenge the police officer, they get into a physical altercation, things go left, they die, something happens, use of force is utilized, and then they want to cry about the result. When in reality, it's not the police killing Black people, it's Black people killing Black people. And if you want to talk about Black on white violence, Black people kill white people.
So this is another dichotomy. It's a false dichotomy. And again, I can destroy these people's arguments for years on end. I could talk infinitely. Just it's ridiculous. He says, you Black people being killed by the police. No, it's Black people being killed by Black people. This is a false dichotomy. The reason that the population is more angered by the police killing Black people is because, unlike your peers, other civilians, be them Black or white, we don't expect other civilians to be those who are providing our safety, providing for protection of property, those who we have made public servants and funded through our tax dollar, not only today, but over generations. So if another Black person commits a violent crime against you, it is a terrible thing, and we should look into that. I agree. However, you cannot compare this to the police committing what are essentially crimes against Black people when they're violent toward Blacks or they murder Blacks, because those are the people that we're paying our tax dollar to. Those are the people whose actual job it is to protect and serve, not to be aggressive, violent, and dominate. And I will also further say that it's become so despicable in this police state that the police they pretty much grimy to everybody. They're grimy to other police officers that they might encounter off duty. They're grimy to white folks. It's really despicable because the government has gotten too big and they've lost their original charge, which they were charged with serving the taxpayer.
People 2 times as much. And on top of that, most of the shootings in America, a lot of the times, are white cops killing other unarmed white men. So this whole systemic racism or police brutality or, it's all so messed up. The reality is this: Black people have been able to get away with a ridiculous amount of privilege in America for a very long time. They're able to be racist with impunity. They're able to call white people.
So when he says they're able to get away with a lot of privilege, I'll say, what do you mean by privilege? Are you talking about the fact that 49% of the prison population is Black? Is that the privilege you're talking about? Are you talking about the fact that Blacks have the lowest levels of educational attainment? Is that what you're speaking of? What are you talking about? So if we want to categorize it racially, if we looked at it racially in terms of DEI or even affirmative action, we see that the white female is the beneficiary. White. So if we're looking at it racially, then we would still have to reassign the privilege to whites. But I really don't speak in terms of privilege, because if your ancestors created that privilege for you, hey, that's what they earned for you. And it is what it is. But what he's doing is he's absolutely lying, and Piers is not challenging him to give any evidence. And that's why Piers is a particularly slimy character, because you allow Myron to go on and on with fallacious arguments. They're specious arguments. It sounds like he's correct because it's almost right, but it's completely wrong, actually.
Without being challenged back. And quite frankly, white America's had enough of it, and the chickens have come to roost. Awesome. Now, look, am I saying...
Now, how crazy is he when he says white America has had enough of it? You're an Arab. You're an Arab. Well, what do you mean? Are you white? Like, why do you care? And that's what I would have asked as Piers. I said, hey, Myron, I just can't help but notice everyone on the panel is either black or white. So we're kind of directly in this thing. Why do you care? Like your parents, their mother tongue was Arabic, not Swahili. Why do you care? Like what dog do you have in the race? A lot of these black folks, their family's been here for 400 years. Why do you care so much? And, in answering that question, honestly, it just removes him from the conversation because he doesn't need to care. He's just a commentator, just like a Ben Shapiro or anybody else. They're just commentators. And when Ben Shapiro is speaking about things that don't involve Zionism, then really he's getting outside of his he's just making content. And frankly, this has nothing to do with Myron, and certainly he shouldn't be speaking on behalf of white people, talking about they're fed up. Because truth be told, I don't think that's the case. I, as Myron does, I'm sure, have a ton of white friends. I almost never hear them say, I'm fed up with the way black people are acting. No, it's that he's around folks that are radicals and racists, and they have a lot to say.
And everyone in the chat right now, I see you guys, a few of you, I'm reading the regular chat. You're like, yo, just let the video play. We already let this portion of the video play. Myron went ahead and spoke, but Marquette is doing a systematic breakdown of each point that is said. So that's what we're doing right now. It's called an internal critique. But okay, let's continue on.
That's awesome. Am I saying that's great? No, but for literally the better part of almost 2 decades since the Obama era, we've had to have BLM and liberalism shoved down our throats. And quite frankly, we're all tired of it.
Pause.
Right. But just to be.
So when he speaks of BLM and liberalism, you're talking about white people, dummy. Liberalism is not something that was created by blacks. In fact, one of my major criticisms of black people in America, and in fact around the world, is that they don't seem to be the biggest thinkers. They've not created any ideology or systems of thought. So liberalism is something that comes from whites, and as it's practiced today and spread throughout the earth, it is something that comes from whites. And where do whites program black people with this idea? They do it in public schools. Teach for America is one major organization that has infiltrated public schools, and they teach this stuff to blacks and Latinos in poverty. And they also reprogram you at the university level, and of course in between. And then Netflix and other instruments they have. So when he's talking about liberalism, again, he's stepping away from blacks, and he's actually talking about what whites are doing. And the truth is, when you're in a majority white system, political system, which is a majority rules system, a democracy, and in this case, it's more rightly described as a republic, then anything that happens can only happen with the consent of white people. So when he's making a suggestion that blacks are some organized villainous group that's highly effective and methodical, this is utterly ludicrous. Black people can scarcely figure out how to keep their families together. They're not creating any mastermind plots to marginalize the whites. That's a different group of people that are going to remain unnamed.